We're standing in the swirling dust of a concrete recycling yard to witness the exact moment a ship ceases to exist. Only the skeletal spine remains, resting on heavy blocks, entirely stripped of its roaring engines. The sprawling, dusty space where a massive 300-meter commercial giant stood just months ago is now mostly empty air. What remains is the centerline spine, the keel. Over its 25-year lifespan, this line of steel has endured tens of millions of violent, pounding wave impacts across hostile oceans without ever fracturing. It is the structural root of the ship. Laid as the very first piece of steel in the building dock decades ago, it is fittingly the absolute last piece to be removed. Even in this skeletal state, the bottom of the hull remains a highly volatile environment. The final structural spaces left intact are the double-bottom tanks, and they require strict regulatory clearance before the demolition can finish. Though drained of heavy bunker fuel, empty tanks are dangerous. Microscopic rust layers along the bulkheads trap dormant hydrocarbon molecules. When the sun heats the exterior steel, the thermal energy agitates these molecules, suddenly releasing combustible vapors into the void. To measure this dangerous threat, an independent, certified marine chemist lowers a digital gas detector deep into the dark tanks. They are carefully checking the lower explosive limit, or LEL, which indicates the lowest concentration of gas capable of igniting. If the meter registers any danger, massive industrial ventilation fans are brought in to force fresh air through the voids. This continues until the digital meter reads exactly 0%. Only when the atmosphere is completely purged does the chemist sign the gas-free certificate. This mandatory piece of paperwork legally authorizes the yard to introduce open flames, paving the way for the absolute end of the ship. A lone shipbreaker steps forward and kneels beside the thickest steel plate of the central keel. He dials the valves on his heavy oxy-acetylene torch until the chaotic orange flame tightens into a blinding, roaring, blue-white spear of pure heat. This exact central block is frequently the same plate where a ceremonial coin was welded for good luck during the ship's keel-laying ceremony. As the cutter works, he actively undoes the very first physical action ever taken to bring the ship into existence. He presses the core of the flame directly against the scarred steel, rapidly heating the metal until it glows a bright, molten orange. Depressing the oxygen lever, a high-pressure jet blows the liquid metal away, carving a line of cascadal sparks through the spine of the vessel. The cutter expertly navigates the thick plate, leaving only a tiny, fragile sliver of metal connecting the block to the remaining scrap. He steps back, turns off his torch, and allows the sheer force of gravity to finish the brutal work. The immense weight of the severed block overpowers that remaining steel, tearing free and slamming heavily onto the concrete pad. In that precise moment of violent impact, the structure loses its mechanical integrity, transforming entirely from a commercial ship into a collection of scrap metal. While the physical death of the ship happens with a loud crash on the cutting floor, its legal death occurs in absolute silence inside a sterile government office thousands of miles away. Yard management compiles the final hazardous waste manifests and authorized gas-free certificates into a comprehensive dossier. This forms the statement of completion, declaring the vessel has been fully dismantled in strict accordance with international law. A registry clerk receives this document, pulls up the vessel's digital file, and locates its International Maritime Organization, or IMO, number. This mandatory 7-digit code is permanently assigned to the hull upon its construction. Unlike a painted name or a national flag, an IMO number is absolutely unique. It tracks the vessel throughout its entire operational life and is never reused for any other ship in history. The clerk initiates the final keystroke, and the ship's official status flashes to deleted. At that exact second, the heavy insurance policies evaporate, the classification records are permanently archived, and the vessel is struck from global maritime law. The severed keel block is quickly loaded onto a flatbed truck, driven away from the quiet yard, and delivered into the chaotic, deafening roar of a secondary re-rolling mill. Heavy mechanical tongs shove the rusted plate deep into a massive industrial furnace. Inside this inferno, the heavy layers of marine fouling and deep ocean scars are instantly burned away. The steel loses its rigid form, glowing a pure, liquid orange as it reaches extreme malleability under the intense thermal pressure. Steel possesses a remarkable metallurgical property. It can be recycled infinitely without any degradation to its underlying atomic structure. The very iron atoms currently glowing in this furnace could theoretically have been forged during the Industrial Revolution. The glowing softened plate is violently pushed through a series of heavy mechanical rollers. This process stretches and compresses the metal until it emerges from the far end of the mill as premium, dark lengths of construction rebar and clean flat plating. The intense fire purifies the metal. The steel has completely lost the memory of its past battles with the corrosive ocean, totally renewed and immediately ready to begin a new life cycle. Those newly forged plates are loaded onto a cargo barge and transported across the Java Sea. They arrive in the warm, humid morning air of a sprawling, modern multi-purpose shipyard in Surabaya, Indonesia. This animated diagram breaks down a modern ship's hull design. It highlights a surprising manufacturing reality. Up to 25% of a brand new vessel's total volume is composed of secondary, recycled metal harvested from dismantled ships. This means the new inter-island ferry being built today inherently carries the recycled DNA of the cargo ships, tankers, and tugboats that sailed the archipelago decades before it. A heavy gantry crane grips the recycled plate, smoothly swinging it through the air and lowering it toward a line of wooden assembly blocks. A team of shipwrights steps forward to align the edges, and the shipyard director officially welds a ceremonial coin onto the surface. The death of an obsolete bulk carrier directly provides the steel for the hopeful birth of a completely new vessel. As the sun rises over that freshly laid keel, our massive 40-episode physical journey perfectly closes. We have tracked the entire human and physical life cycle of the commercial ship, from the drafting tables of naval architects to the purifying furnaces of the recycling mills. However, an invisible architecture still looms over everything we have seen. A deeply complex financial ecosystem silently dictates the fate of every vessel and every crew member. From the initial loan amortization to the final scrap value calculation we just witnessed, the entire lifespan of a commercial ship is mathematically modeled by financial algorithms before the very first plate of steel is ever cut. Next season, we leave the concrete shipyards behind and enter the ruthless, high-stakes boardrooms of the global financial capitals. In Series 6, we will uncover the volatile charter markets, the billions of dollars traded daily, and the invisible financial syndicates operating out of London, Geneva, and Singapore that truly command global trade. We now know exactly how the physical ship works. But we must now ask, who actually owns the oceans? Thank you for sailing with us. The water awaits our return.